Hello, everybody. Welcome back to this week's episode of The War Room, brought to you as part of the Clonestar podcast. I am your host, Mike Overton, and joining me in the co-host seat this week is my wonderful friend from Ireland, Joseph Hurley. Sho, how are you?
Not too bad, Mike. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Now, our guest this week, we are delighted to be joined by one of the top female writers in the industry. A frankly brilliant resume which encompasses Marvel, Star Wars, DC, Spider-Man, Justice League, Stranger Things, and a comic book series called Primer. And of course, the most important one, Star Trek Prodigy. We are absolutely delighted to welcome to the show Jennifer Muro. Jennifer, thank you for joining us.
Hello, how are you guys?
I'm good, thank you.
Mike, well done, Mike. You got through the intro really well, except you just made a mistake at the very end, but it's okay.
But that's where overdubbing comes in. It's fine.
Just AI does that. Our new overlords will fix
No, we don't use AI.
Jennifer, when I was going through your resume and your CV and all these kind of things, I'm making it sound like a very corporate interview as I say that. I was checking out Instagram, and you were saying that you're looking forward to a well-earned break because for the last 3 years, you've been working non-stop on 3 different shows. How have you handled such a workload like that?
With grace and dignity. No, with very little of that actually, but with nonstop and with a lot of unfortunate sacrifice of social things, a lot of sacrifice of not traveling or missing trips and things, and is it worth it? Probably, because these shows are amazing, but also it's about finding a balance. And that's the thing I've learned for the future. But it is working 7 to 7 sometimes, 7 a to 7 p.m. Some weekends, sometimes you just deadlines you just have to get done. And sometimes you hop from project to project. These were actually pretty separate, except one was overlapping. Other than that, it was just nonstop.
Would you classify yourself as a workaholic?
I didn't want to. That wasn't the aim. I what I do is put my all into it. So I guess, is that a workaholic? It's more like I just put 100% in. So if I'm doing it, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I don't do it half-assed. I use my whole ass. Yes. So
Jennifer, going all the way back to the very start, long before the days of doing 3 different shows in 3 years and overlapping shows and all this, where did your story kind of start? Like, what was it that you wanted to kind of do when you were kind of growing up?
I mean, it's so funny. I grew up on Long Island in New York. My mom I'm the first one born here. My mom is from Italy, and I was just a very strange little girl. I liked different things than a lot of other kids, and I think it really started with Goonies back in 80. It was 84, 85, 80, 83, 84, 85, somewhere in there. And I thought this was the coolest thing. And then there was this magazine that showed all the behind the scenes of it, of how it's made. And I was like, oh, this is a thing you can do. And it was, holy moly, this is like, after that, I was like, this is what I want to do. Either that or music. Music was my other love. So between making movies or film scoring, those were the 2 things, or composing or doing themes. I've always loved that. I mean, I did guitar and bass and like rock stuff, but I always loved scores. And I always loved that the composition part of that. So when I was a kid, I wanted to move to California, and that's like ridiculous. We were a small Italian family, and it was growing up with just my mom and my sister because of a divorce. And so it's like, that's not what you did. You went to be a secretary, or you went to, you didn't do crazy things like that.
You got a real job, a 9 to 5. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. It was the ridiculous notions of a little girl, But then as I got older, I managed to get to USC somehow. I got into USC. And I said I was going to go do that. And it was like saying, I'm going to go to the moon. I might as well have said I'm going into space. And they're like, oh, that's sure. Sure you are. And when I had that happen, they were like, oh my God, this is real. And they were just shocked and crying because they're like, oh my God, you're actually going to do this thing. And I ended up doing the thing. But I actually went to USC in California originally for film scoring. But back then I play by ear, so I didn't have that traditional ability. I mean, music is math to me on the page, like reading, it's all math to me. My brain just shuts down. So I think now I probably would have been a composer because MIDI was just starting. Pro Tools was very, very early on. Is very early days. And now you can do so much and it's amazing. But then I ended up, because I didn't end up going to that program, I went into the film program. And that's how I came from there to here.
Jennifer, I'm curious then, like, 'cause obviously the perception with Italians can be they're very kind of passionate, very kind of, strong and all that. How much did you take from your mother then in terms of kind of that? Or is your mother that type of person? And how much did you take from her then in that kind of situation?
Well, I took a lot of her drive, energy, and anxiety, I guess. Because, it was us growing up by herself. She had to do a lot. She had to, hold down a bunch of jobs. And that nonstop, I think I definitely inherited that energy. Now I don't, now I'm exhausted. So I don't have the energy I did. Thank God I did a lot of my career already, because now I think back and go, my gosh, the energy I had and the drive I had. So that's where it absolutely started. And we come from not like my grandmother had 3 girls. My mother had 2 girls. My aunt had 3 girls. My other aunt had a girl and 2 boys. Like, it was all these women, lots and lots of women. And so you didn't sleep much.
And in terms of then, say, wanting to do film scores and all that, who were some of the composers that you really kind of looked up to back in the day when you were kind of growing up?
I mean, obviously John Williams, who did it, Jerry Goldsmith, Horner, Ennio Morricone, John Barry's great too. There's old school stuff too, and newer composers. I mean, it's anything from all the movies we love, and like North by Northwest is one of my favorite scores, and that's more of an old school thing. So, yeah, and I grew up loving old movies as well. So I was definitely a historical person that way. I had like Cary Grant in my locker as people had Backstreet Boys and all that stuff, and I was like, I have like the Beatles and Cary Grant. And I was just a very different girl.
Normally, Jennifer, someone ages the podcast in some shape or form by referencing something. I don't think we've ever gotten back to Cary Grant at any point. So that is absolutely astonishing. That is probably the best aging of the podcast I've ever heard, because none of our audience is going to have a clue who in the name of God Cary Grant is. So we're going to have to
like
put it.
Cary. How do you spell that? Yeah, exactly. They can look it up.
In terms of then, so you went to USC, you were thinking of originally being a composer and things like that. What made you change and say, "Do you know what, I'm going to look at something else"? And when you looked at something else, what did you say? Writing, producing, or what did you think would be your kind of journey and where it would take you?
I mean, I think I switched obviously because of the reading and the traditional part of that I couldn't really cut it, because I was such a play by ear person. So that's why I shifted into film production. And that's a general thing. And then there's a critical studies thing, which is more study of, literally critical, like reading of movies and analyzation. But the film production part is just, it's broad. It's lighting and sound and the actual directing part of it and the writing part of it and the editing part of it. And so yeah, it was very broad, and then it got me here, which is what mattered. I actually didn't get my first job because of USC. I got it because of a producer who happened to have grown up on Long Island, and he was like, "I like you, kid. I'm gonna give you a chance." It was one of those things. So I was like, "Well, that was a waste of money at USC for all those years." Okay, that was. So it's funny how life turns out. You don't know.
What was the job? What did he offer you?
My first job was the Nick Cannon show at Nickelodeon on Sunset. It was a live action show back in the early 2000s. And I was just their assistant. I was just the producer's assistant, the two runners. And that got canceled. And I was like, okay, well, that was quick. And then they needed help in development in the animated side of the company. So I jumped over to there, and the rest is history.
Like, looking at some of the shows that you've worked on outside of obviously that one, like in terms of, say, SpongeBob, Go Diego Go, Dora the Explorer, things like that, you've really kind of stuck around the world of kind of animation predominantly. Like, what was it the kind you drew you to that more than say live action or something? Or was it
Well, it
just
didn't
how
draw
your
me.
career went?
It didn't draw me as much as the points don't transfer, and I didn't know that. Meaning, like, once you're in animation, it's a whole other union and a whole other world, and it's very hard to jump to live action. They're very disparate, and it's a whole issue that I have a big problem with. But that's changing slowly, which is wonderful, and I'm so glad that is getting much more recognition. Although I have to say, all the Warner Brothers stuff of the 90s very much influenced me. And I worked at Warner Brothers Studio Store, and I was a history buff in terms of animation. Batman the Animated Series, all of that stuff was a huge influence. So it's not like I was like, I don't like animation. I mean, I loved it. Huge. So that definitely was in me. Absolutely. But I didn't choose animation as much as kind of fell into it because of that, because that show got canceled and development in animation needed help. It just happened. It just went that direction. And back then, a lot of female writers, shockingly, really were subjugated to preschool. And there wasn't a lot of action animation writing for females. I mean, I know that it wasn't that long ago, not that old, but it really was only in the late 2000s where I think it really started to change. There weren't even a lot of female creators in animation in the TV space, at least as far as I know. There weren't that many.
At what point then, Jennifer, did you kind of start to say to yourself, okay, there's a gap here in the market. There's not a whole lot of female writers out there. Like, did it kind of hit you like a ton of bricks, or did you just slowly discover this over time?
I kind of always knew, and it's so funny when you're in it, you're just so you know it's wrong, but you're accepting of it because you're just trying to get the next job. But you could tell why it was like, okay, unless you knew someone, it was very specific. That's why I did Care Bears early on. That's why I did preschool shows that I wrote on early on. In terms of editing, I was an editor while I did development, I did editing, I did recording studios, I did circle takes, I did script supervising, I did post-production. So I did soup to nuts. I did pretty much every job, which inadvertently has helped me become a better kind of, running a room or, creating things, which is at the time you think, God, I'm all over the place, and then it ends up helping.
But you understand all the different roles and how they all intertwine together. So
right, absolutely, and I got to know a lot of the voiceover community because of that, and I got to and casting, and you get an instinct, or this post-production house is fantastic, or this animation house is great, or what have you, and it's interesting how that all turned out. But but at the time I also did editing, and that's where like a SpongeBob thing or a Fairly Odd Parents thing, and then Dora for years. But I was also writing for other studios around while I was editing. So this is what I meant by that energy, where I was like nonstop. I was creating shows and then writing for other shows, and then I was editing, and it was just a lot. I'm exhausted just thinking about it.
Do you remember the first episode of TV you ever wrote?
I did a Bible for a pilot while I was a development assistant. And that's the first thing I wrote. And then I think it was another Nickelodeon show early on, or there was a producer at Warner Brothers that was doing an overseas stuff. Overseas was another thing that a lot of us did at the time. That was a lot of women did that as well, which is like, South America needs something, or France needs something, or that happened a lot as well. So those were the early days, like, but the first thing I ever did was a Bible, and that was an action show, which was funny enough, but it was more of a comedy thing, like a very Nickelodeon thing at the time. But that was 03 maybe. So that was my first my paycheck, where I helped write this Bible. I'm going to use money.
And as you were going through it, you're working on all these different shows. Was there any kind of specific show that you were kind of saying, that's the one I want to work on?
At the time, I mean, gosh, I think Buffy might have been done by then, but something like Buffy would have been amazing. Star Trek would have always been the case, but I don't think in the 2000s there was much on TV for.
Yeah. Just Enterprise from 01 to 05. That was it.
Yeah, that was it. So that's that was like an imaginary dream that like didn't exist at the time. So yes, that absolutely would have been. God, I'd have to go think back what the heck was going on back then. But Buffy comes to mind just because how cool that would have been. But that was the genre. I liked that kind of writing where there was action and a heart and serious storylines, but with a comedy edge and just sharp and witty. So that was a great combo.
I remember reading before about one of the writers on the original Transformers series, and he said he actually ended up hating it because he'd be told, like at 8 o'clock in the morning, he needed to have a full episode thought of and fully written and scripted by the end of that day. So I'm just wondering, Jennifer, how fast did you have to turn around scripts back in the day when you first started writing, when you first started kind of going out there?
Oh, wow. So you're talking about in like the 80s Transformers?
Yeah. If you, I was reading on IMDb before, and the writer said, yeah, he had to turn around episodes sometimes within 24 hours. Yeah.
And that were those 11 minutes or half hours?
Oh, they were 20-minute episodes.
All like 20, like a full 22 with commercials.
Yes, sorry, yeah.
Sometimes they're 11-minute chunks. I didn't know if they were 11-minute chunks because that I've done before, but I've done 48-hour turnarounds easily, absolutely over the years. Yeah, but it's I used to be really fast. I'm trying to think. I was like, oh wow, because they're like, oh yeah, to have a week. I'm like, I'm done in 3 days. But that was a long time ago. That was many moons ago. But yeah, no, I've had 40 hours. 24, I don't think I've ever had to do. Maybe rewrites, yes, absolutely. Some are by the end of the day, absolutely. But that sounds very 80s. The here's the whole script in the morning, have it done by the night. That tracks.
Oh my word. I have to ask, and obviously you've referenced Star Trek. How big of a Star Trek fan were you growing up?
Huge. I mean, TNG really, and because Wesley Crusher was sort of in my age range, and so that was like the dream come true. Going, oh my God, I could be that. I can be on the ship. I could be on the, with, and the movies were a huge influence for me. So really the two biggest ones, obviously the original series, but the original series cast in the features and TNG were the two biggest things for me. When it was originally on, I mean, we're talking 87, 88. I mean, obviously it didn't hit its stride till third season. We all know that, but
no, I'm a defender of the second season. I absolutely love season 2 of The Next Generation.
There's some good episodes. There's great episodes. Yeah.
But as a season, it's a bit weak.
It is not. Would you get out of that? It's absolutely great.
Although the first episode of season 3 with Wesley, it was a very big Wesley episode that first. And you could just feel the tone and the shift. And it was just like, oh, this is
They'd all
getting
gelled
going.
by that point. They all knew exactly, they were all good friends at that point, weren't they?
You see, the great thing about season 2, because of the fact that there was a writer's strike on, a lot of the episodes focused on kind of the characters more, which I really did enjoy. And I always feel that Wesley is absolutely brilliant in season 2 because there's a lot of episodes about him. And if you look at the episode Pen Pals, where he has to lead the planetary survey, you can take so much advice from that episode and take it into your actual life because it's bloody brilliant. The conversation he has with Riker in 10 Forward is absolutely magnificent because it's all about, like, what would Picard do in this situation? And it's all about, like, he'd size up the different options and he'd make the right decision. It's funny, when I was in secondary school, in our business studies book, there was actually a chapter on management and leadership. And in the middle of the first page, there was a box that said Star Trek: The Next Generation. And I was there, say what? And it said Captain Jean-Luc Picard commands a ship of over 1,000 people, but he does through leadership, delegation, and tasks and all this. Oh my God, this is so cool. Star Trek.
That's a cool book. I would have learned way better in school if I had that.
Same. But let's face it, in our adult lives, we have all gone, what would Captain Picard do in this situation?
Absolutely.
Or what would Janeway do in this situation? We've all done it. I mean, I did. I used to be a retail manager, and all the time I would go, what would Picard do in this situation? All the time.
Awesome. Although I technically literally had to say, what would Janeway do in this situation? Because I had to write it. So
that's true.
That's a whole different reason.
Okay, you have one up on us.
She's trumped us in that one, Mike. Absolutely trumped us. And hang on, in terms of Star Wars then, Jennifer, were you as big into Star Wars or not?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Back then, all we had was original trilogy.
Yeah.
But even in my 20s, like it was right before the prequels. The prequels were, I think, during college years for me. But it was wonderful. Like I was a huge, like Return of the Jedi was my favorite. I know that's always controversial. And they're like, no, there's Ewoks. And they're like, no, it's Empire's the best. And they're all wonderful. They're all wonderful. I mean, come on, let's let's be real here. So yes, that was a huge influence on me, and it still is, and they're still my favorite. And if there was never any other Star Wars, I would have been perfectly happy with those three to this day.
As you were kind of going through and getting more experience and kind of what you were doing and things like that, and kind of going back to your earlier point about like female kind of writers and shows and things like that, when did you start to kind of notice the change? And I suppose, how much did you feel you were involved in kind of bringing about that change as well?
Well, I sold my first show in 2010 or 11. And it was a female-driven action show for Nickelodeon that got into development, which was wonderful. And at the time, had that show gone, I would have been one of the first female animation creators. That sounds ridiculous, like that. It was not that long ago. And then after that, like Rebecca Sugar came in with like, Steven Universe, and it got more and more and more. And by the way, there might have been one, or there's probably a few in there, but it wasn't prominent. So that's shocking. So that's when I first noticed it. And then they canceled that kind of a track of doing, they wanted to do female superhero, and then went back to boys comedy because that's new. But that's the way it was at the time. And I think by the early to mid 2010s, it was like 2010 to 15 is when I started seeing the shift. And that's when I shifted. And in terms of action, my first break was Justice League. And Jim Krieg, who's an amazing producer there, who's done a million amazing animated DC properties, projects, gave me a shot. I had a friend recommend me, and I had my samples, and he gave me a chance, and that was the beginning of it. I got really lucky. I got lucky that someone actually went, okay.
Yeah.
And what did you feel were some of the stories that weren't being told, or in terms, especially from say a female point of view, or did you just feel that, like, I was actually watching certain Star Trek Next Generation earlier, and a lot of the episodes that centered around Troy or Crusher, it was always a love story. It was always kind of seen to be, that's kind of what it was. That's all the kind of, female stories were. Did you feel that was hugely prevalent in Hollywood? And what kind of stories did you feel needed to be told?
I think it existed. I think Xena existed, Buffy existed, Janeway was, so it was there. It just, more of that would have been absolutely lovely. I just think there weren't a lot of female action writers at the time. Yeah. And by the way, in live action, there was plenty. This is more, I'm talking in the animation space. There was, there was a lot of female Buffy writers, which was wonderful. But even in Star Wars, there weren't many female writers in the Star Wars universe, for example. So I was one of the first ones. Not that that's, oh, I'm fancy. It's just like, oh my God, how'd that happen? And there were some like Clone Wars, like, so it existed. It just was very few. But there were my heroes. I mean, Wonder Woman, Linda Carter's Wonder Woman, and Charlie's Angels were mine. So growing up, I found them. So for me, it existed. It just wasn't a lot of them. But there's a lot more now, which is great. But also the whole TV space is super cluttered, so it's hard to find a lot of that stuff. But that's a whole other conversation.
And when you were doing Forces of Destiny, what was the kind of the idea behind it? What did you hope to achieve with it?
Well, it really was to bring younger female Star Wars fans into the Star Wars universe. It's like early, like, just not indoctrination, but in a way that was accessible. It wasn't even just that. It was just celebrating the females of Star Wars, or the women of Star Wars in that world, whether it be Leia or Padme or whoever, it was just kind of nice to see a point of view from their stories. And that was and toys, always toys, because toys are fun, which is fantastic. So that was kind of the goal, was to tell some female stories in that point of view, and for young girls to feel like they can have a part of it if they didn't. And by the way, I didn't need that growing up. I mean, I just loved what I loved. But it is nice to see more than just Leia, that girls can have now, and that didn't exist before.
Which was your favorite episode of Forces of Destiny? I know that's an awful question to ask, but I'm curious, which was your standout episode?
I mean, two of them. One was Leia and the dress, because how the heck did she get that dress from the Ewoks? I mean, what was that about? So that answering that question, or the point of view of that question, was super fun. And ironically, the one episode that it wasn't female based, which was Mark Hamill came back as Luke for on Dagobah for Empire Strikes Back. So that's kind of, hypocritical of me, but come on.
It's Mark Hamill.
Luke, we see unseen scenes of Luke and Yoda on Dagobah. Come on. So yeah, of course, that's going to be one of my favorite episodes.
I have to ask another awkward question. Which one do you prefer, Star Trek or Star Wars?
Oh, you can't ask that.
I can. I very, very much can. I absolutely can.
I mean, if I had to live in those worlds, Star Trek, hands down, in terms of like wanting to be in that hopeful world. I mean, because Star Wars is always at war, and there's always, sadness. But by the way,
and it's dusty. Everything in Star Trek in Star Wars is dusty.
It's a bit dusty.
It's lived in.
That's fair.
There's a lot of sand in the Star Wars galaxy.
A lot of sand. That's right. But yeah,
we got carpets, so it's fine.
That's fair. And yeah, and the carpets are lovely on the Enterprise D, I hear. So, yeah. But I Star Trek has always been my heart. And if I ever wanted to live in that world, it would absolutely be Star Trek. So favorite's tough. I mean, I think original trilogy Star Wars and Star Trek are kind of even. Star Wars as a world as a whole, and Star Trek would be a little bit more. But they're both wonderful, and they're just both different. So that's a tough question. But I have such a scienciness to me. I love that whole, if you just, shift the Heisenberg compensators and you can friggin' do this and that, so I just love the technobabble. So, and Star Wars doesn't have a lot of that. So, but I also love D&D and that mystical element of Star Wars. So that also, that speaks to me as well. But the technobabble part of me is way too strong to outweigh that. So yeah.
So how big of a D&D player are you?
I was a lot more. I'm not these days. I wouldn't have had time at all for that. But I started when I was 17 in high school. I played D&D 2nd edition, and then I didn't play again until 5th edition, way later. And then I had known the Critical Role guys as voiceover actors, and I knew them before they even were playing all that stuff. So, D&D came back into my world again, which did not expect to happen. But it was nice to find like, oh, we were all nerds and this is how we grew up, and we all found each other somehow again. And here we are. So it's so funny though, because my mom never understood what the heck that was growing up. Oh, you play the game with the dice and your friends in the basement. And so then when I got the whole Vox Machina thing, I was like, yeah, Mom, it's paid off. I am actually like getting paid because of that kind of world.
I suppose the question is your basement as good as Todd's?
I don't have a basement anymore because I'm in California, but growing up, that was
let's face it, Todd Stashwick's basement is one hell of a basement, the nerd lair.
Oh my gosh. Boy, I miss, although now I have my bar room. So this is kind of my basement equivalent of nerddom. Cave.
So outside of obviously Star Trek and Star Wars and things like that, and D&D, of course, like you've worked like with Marvel, you've worked on Spider-Man, you worked on DC, you worked in Justice League and all this kind of thing. Were you into all of those growing up as well? Or is that just something kind of the answer is yes, clearly you're about to jump out of the chair there going, oh my God, yeah, of course, are you mad? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I collected comics. X-Men, I had a X-Men, 90s X-Men. That's what I collected.
Yeah.
And Image, a lot of Image comics were, Image was just starting back then. And like, they had all the fun stuff like Gen 13 and cool, it was a whole new, J. Scott Campbell, he had all that kind of new look. And of course, Jim Lee was at Marvel at the time. And so, and I loved Batman. So it was and Harley Quinn was a huge thing, of course. So, yeah, no, absolutely. So comic books in the 90s were something I haven't collected in a long time, but I still have my box of comics, and they're all in their packaging, all careful. And
now, can I ask yet another awful question, Jennifer?
Well, can you? I don't know. We'll find out.
Which is your favorite Batman graphic novel?
Ooh.
Oh, I mean, at the time, Killing Joke was so cool and so not different, but it was poignant. Um, Dark Knight Returns. Um, I mean, I'm like, God, I was like, I'm just going back. I'm like, God, I loved so much. I loved X-Men so damn much. I had so much Psylocke. I'm like trying to remember Batman. I was like, oh God, but I went through my box recently. I'm like, God, I had a lot of X-Men. Damn. So I had, and I think the animated series was like, I was so obsessed with, and that took over my life more than even the books
Yeah.
at the time. So
Actually, in terms of X-Men, then, if you were to recommend anyone to read a specific, say, X-Men graphic novel first, which one would you pick?
X-Men graphic novel
Mm-hmm.
for, oh, wait, say that again in terms of,
If you were recommending someone to start reading the X-Men comics,
oh, now,
yes.
um, I would go through 90s X-Men, the second series. I would start through that whole thing. I mean, but then again, I'm biased, so that's my favorite. But there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot that's God, it's endless since I mean, that's way more than just the early 90s.
Yeah.
But that's what I would do that series. But it was really cool, and there's a reason why it's so popular and it's awesome and people remember it because it was just a really great run.
So, like, you're living every nerd's dream then in terms of you grew up loving all this stuff. You grew up
Yeah.
then grew into working on all this and things like that. Why did you decide to do your own comic book series?
I think it's so funny because my ex-husband at the time had the nugget of an idea, and Primer had a different name at the time. I'm like, oh no, we can't call it that. Let's call it something else. And then we started working on it together and building that. So, it's so funny because when we were married, we never worked on anything together with all the projects he had worked on because he's in that space as well. And it just kind of happened. And we had a friend at DC in the lit world, and I had mentioned it at a party. I think I was at Carlin's birthday party or something like that. And I pitched and she said, oh my gosh, this sounds great. Because we're so used to pitching in the animated space and in that sci-fi fantasy. So we didn't pitch it as a comic book. It was just, here's a concept. And so it wasn't almost, it kind of just happened in a strange way. And it fit the space at the time. So it's a dream come true. And seeing it in print is like, oh my God. I remember opening when our graphic novel came out, it opened to a page and there was a picture of Primer with blue hair and goggles, and it was so cool. And it was such an X-Men image. I was like, oh my God, it hit me it was so trippy. So very grateful for the experience, and it continues, and it ends up being a hit, even though it came out June of 2020, right during the pandemic. So everything shut down and we had no book tour, we had nothing, but yet somehow people found it, and it's done crazy well, even though a lot of people don't know about it. A lot of people do. So it's this odd thing that happened. So yeah, I didn't set out to. I don't know if that answers the question. That was a very long-winded answer, but
What do you hope to do with Primer going forward?
I mean, I would love it to be a series. I mean, I think it's so funny because it was even talked about doing it in the live action space, and there was some development in the live action space for Primer, but it lends itself immediately to the animated space, and I think it would be wonderful. And I think that is that female action comedy that would definitely, fulfill that part of it, because she has that mildly Deadpool sense of humor without all the grittiness and all the the rated R stuff, but she's got that kind of ridiculousness, and I love that for female characters, and I wish there were more of them like that. And so that would be a great goal, and more books. Of course, we are actually doing more books, and they're coming. And I just received the issues for the 4 comic books. Now our graphic novel's been broken up to 4, just in comic book size rather than the graphic novel size. And then the second book's coming out this summer, and then more from there. So I hope it continues, and people still like it. And let's see what they think about the next book. I don't know, but the Teen Titans are in it, so I can't imagine doing that terribly.
And for those who don't know Primer's story, Jennifer, what is Primer's story?
Primer is about a girl named Ashley Rayburn, and she finds a set of paints, and each paint gives her individual powers. And once she puts on those body paints, it's like, flight or telepathy or superhuman or whatever it might be. And she can't use more than 3 at a time because 4 will like knock you out. So, which helps limit the ability to use it, or else she'd be like the most powerful human on the planet. But she can do a lot, which is pretty crazy. So I think when DC heard the concept, they're like, this is original and seems like a no-brainer. We should probably do this. So I think it was just like, oh, that's really cool. No one's thought of that colorful, concept, but like, paint and powers and putting that on and the combinations of that. So that's how it kind of came about, going, wow, this is original and different. And, I have to give it to my ex-husband for, originating this thought, because he's a huge comic book fan, but he also loves colors and he loves brightness and he loves comedy. So I think, and then and I love that stuff too, but I also love like, what's the themes or what's the heart or what's the emotional element of this?
Yeah.
Or, you can't do this because it might be construed this way. And he's like, oh, I didn't think of that. This is even a cooler way to do that. So it was a good combination. And so I think it would be really nice to have that kind of sense of humor out there in that female space for all ages. That's what it is, all ages for me. It's not just, I'm not interested in just doing a kid space. For me, it's 4-quad, and sorry, that's Hollywood speak, 4-quadrant, like all the elements, like adults and kids, and that's,
I thought you were talking about the character from Shrek for a second. I was there going, why is she mentioning Lord Farquaad? Have I missed something here?
Oh, Hollywood, yeah. So I don't know. That's a long rambling answer. I apologize for that, but
Jennifer, all your answers have been wonderful, so don't you apologize for anything at all. Absolutely glorious. So we're extremely in awe, Jennifer, because you grew up as a nerd. You've embraced everything to do with nerddom. I hate you so much for all the things you've wonderfully achieved, because it's just an absolute dream. You've been a writer, you've been an animator, you've been a developer, you've been created your own comic book series. How did the job with Star Trek Prodigy come about?
I think they were just looking for a new person for season 2. I happened to be up for it. I think I was going to go in and talk to the Hageman brothers, but I happened to have gone to, I'm friends with Michael Giacchino, who's an amazing composer who you may know, and he was doing Spider-Man, I think Homecoming. So I think we're at the Fox lot, to hear just to hear the orchestra, just to go to a scoring session. And
I'm even more jealous now.
Well, there was 2 guys there, and it turned out it was the Hageman brothers, and we're like, and I was like, hi, I'm Jennifer Muro, and you're like, I'm like, I think we have a meeting next week or the week after that. And they're like, oh my God, do you want to just like talk about this now? So we went into another room during Michael Giacchino's, like the whole orchestra's there. We went to a side room and just started like just talking about it, and just kind of like met there. And so that's how it began. And then I don't know, or was that season 1? I forget if it was like, you know what? I think we met at the time, and I didn't end up getting the gig. I ended up doing something else, or was I doing Vox Machina at the time? I don't remember. It's all a blur now, but that's the first time we met, and that's how it began. And I don't know if that was for season 1 or if it was for season 2. Either way, they remembered me, and we kind of sort of kept in touch. And I think when season 2 came up, and it was the right time, and we met, and then I became co-producer, and it was really cool. And I think I was co-producer already on Vox Machina, and then then I went to, God, it's amazing how the years just blur and all these projects blur, but they're all really cool projects. So it's like, I don't know, but the initial part was, it wasn't because of Michael Giacchino, but inadvertently it was, kind of, he was a part of it, and ended up doing the main theme, which was really cool.
So how did you get to know Michael Giacchino, and how also you seem to be good friends with Todd Stashwick? How did all this then come about? This is completely personal as well, I might add, just because we're very jealous of you, Jennifer. So this is why I'm asking. Like,
it's kind of all in nerd space. I mean, he's kind of in the North Hollywood area, and I'm in sort of the Toluca Lake, North Hollywood.
Did you just say NoHo?
Yes, sorry.
Didn't you? That's more corporate speak that me and Mike will never understand.
Well, I mean, like Manhattan has Soho, and so there's that word in there. But anyway, it's kind of through the like nerd friends, and I forgot that I met Todd a long while ago, like longer than Michael. Michael I met in 2017 because of Star Wars. He was doing Rogue One at the time.
Yeah.
And Star Wars Celebration, you know, I met Janina Gavankar and you know, and you know, Dave Filoni was there at the time, and it was that whole group. And Janina knew Michael, and we connected, and we kind of just sort of stayed nerd friends ever since. And then Todd met him through, like, it's all, everyone sort of knows each other. Like, don't ever piss anyone off in this town, because like, everyone knows each other in that nerd world. And so, and then we just had so much in common. And then Michael ended up playing with us D&D one night, and like, you know, of course, you know, Todd's famous, you know, Nerd Lair stuff, but Todd I knew even before like he started 12 Monkeys.
Yeah.
And I knew Terry because of my ex-husband. They went to college together, and then Terry ended up meeting Todd somehow, and then he ended up on 12 Monkeys. So it's all very incestuous and wonderful and nerdy. So yeah, it's just, but in terms of Michael, that was Star Wars.
I have to ask a question about Dave Filoni. Does he ever not wear a cowboy hat?
Oh, he totally doesn't wear a cowboy hat if he doesn't have to. Like, you know, I mean, it's heavy, man. The head who wears the crown is heavy. I don't know. There's a phrase in there somewhere. But if not, he's wearing his Penguin shirt for hockey. So it's either that or the hat. So I think it's probably nice for him to not have to wear the hat sometimes. You know, it's a heavy hat to wear.
Yeah.
Take a break. So yeah.
When you came on board with Prodigy, then Jennifer, like, what was kind of the brief for you to do? Was it just to kind of help run the ship, or what exactly was that you were tasked with doing?
I mean, you know, it was a whole blue sky, you know, let's break what this season is, you know, and what they did last season and what they wanted to accomplish the next season. And it was, you know, the Hageman brothers running it. Aaron Walke was co-EP, who was second in command, and I was third command in that. All depending on who was in the room, or if the guys needed to go do stuff or what have you. But yeah, we broke story. I had pitched some stuff, and Aaron had backed me up on some of those pitches. And because of Aaron, a lot of my ideas got through, which is wonderful. And by the way, this was a super open room. Like the brothers are fantastic, and they weren't like, no, they were always so open, but they weren't sure about some of the stuff I was pitching, and Aaron could see the possibilities in it, and a lot of it got in, and I'm super excited about it. And that's not me bragging. That's because I had my nerd brain, and Aaron had his nerd brain, and it got in and going, yeah, no, this is going to be really good. I swear, it's really complicated and really crazy, but like, let's try it. And he and I in the room were always so funny, because we were the nerds, you know, talking about all the details of every episode, and everyone's like, okay, so, you know, gotta go here. So that was so great to work with him on that. But it was, yeah, it was really cool, kind of complicated in a good way. Just really, season 2, I know you haven't asked yet, but just for me, just thinking back, it's amazing. I'm so excited, because it is even more Star Trek than the first season was Star Trek, just inadvertently, just by its concept, because they were so out in the quadrant out there and like doing their thing. This brings it so much more to home, and so much more in the lore and the canon in that world.
In terms of, say, when you were working on it in season 2, what was the kind of vibe regarding, say, its permanence, its future, because of what's been going on with it, you know, getting nearly cancelled, and the fan then kind of attempts to kind of keep it going and things like that?
Yeah, no, we had it as a standalone season. Like, we were, obviously there's a possible future ahead, but we tried to make it its own thing, and it's a very, very satisfying. And we weren't thinking about it at the time. We were just like, let's make a great season and do what we can now. So and things have gotten nuttier. So I'm glad we did that. I'm glad it's its own encapsulated, wonderful thing that could absolutely go on, but is absolutely satisfying, because it's nutty. It's nutty over here, folks. really nutty. It's really nutty right now.
So what can you tell us about season 2 that won't give too much away and get you fired or sued or anything like
Well,
that?
I mean, honestly, what's crazy is I know it dropped in France. So
France,
it's
yeah.
nuts. So there's stuff out there, and I'm so appreciative. I think someone online was like, hey, look, we didn't fly airplanes over Netflix to get spoiled now.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
and we really do appreciate that because we worked so hard on amazing reveals, like jaw-dropping reveals to go, what? Like just epic reveals. So we worked really hard on that. So some of it was, which was nice. It's at Star Trek Las Vegas last year. We did, we showed Voyager and we revealed that the Doctor is there, and those two alone are like, this is amazing. So, and the ship is phenomenal. It's really cool, and there is a lot. There's other Star Trek shows that come into play here, and I'm sure Aaron has talked about some of this. I'm assuming.
Nope.
With you.
Nope. No, he was
No.
very tight-lipped.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really spoilers. I'm just saying in the universe, there's other Star Trek show elements that do come into play. And that's not really spoiling anything. It's just hopefully to get you guys excited to go, oh yeah, no, this goes deep. And when you see, you're going to go, okay, now I understand what Jen was talking about.
Yeah.
So that's not really a spoiler as much as get excited because it's more than just the Voyager world that's going to come into play.
And I, as you know, Jennifer, I ask you all the most awkward questions, so I'm going to do it again. With the exception of Janeway, who is your favorite character in Prodigy to write for or kind of plan out when you were kind of there in the writers' room?
On Prodigy? Oh, you can't do that. That's
I can. Oh, I can. Absolutely, I can.
Oh, can't do that.
Oh, I can.
So there's definitely. Just have me back on, and when it comes out, we'll talk about that, and you'll know.
We'll hold you to that, Jennifer. That when season 2 airs, you will come back on and have a chat with us again. Yes.
Oh, absolutely, because I want to talk about some crazy stuff that
Awesome.
that dreams came true. Like I literally had a dream a year before I got staffed on Prodigy. That was a literal dream. I dreamt a ship. I dreamt a storyline. I dreamt an entire thing. And a lot of it came true because they said yes to stuff, and I'm forever grateful. I mean, it's just like, yeah, you're thinking like, oh my God, can you imagine? Yeah, like I am grateful. Like if I had no career anymore, I'd be like, okay, I did that.
This isn't fair, Jennifer. Just because I asked you the unfair questions doesn't mean you can sit there and say it's going to be so good, but I can't tell you what it's going to be.
I would. Hey, you knew what this was.
Damn it! I never
I just
agreed
want
to
more
this.
Murph. I just want to see more Murph.
I know, and
Murph
there's
is
wonderful things.
Murph is the best character in my opinion.
And
I love
talk
Murph.
about spoilers. I'm not going to give you spoilers, but there is more unveiling of Murph and more interesting things you find out about Murph. That is,
Murph.
It's layers and layers, man. Onion peel. It's an onion peel, and it's
Very
wonderful.
Gelatinous onion peel.
What?
A very gelatinous onion peel.
Very gelatinous onion peel, absolutely. Very adorable. Like I want Murph gummies. That's all I know. They don't think they exist, but
I want Murph plushies. I want a Murph plushie.
I do have. I think they still do. They exist. I mean, I have a Murph.
I don't think officially they exist.
Oh, well, that's just silly.
I think they were unofficial. Yeah, I know.
Okay, well, you know what?
Paramount, make it happen, or Netflix, either or. Someone make it happen. There we go.
Someone make it.
So, Jennifer, being the rabid Star Trek fan you are, was working on Prodigy everything that you were hoping it would be?
Yes, and more so because I got to see things come to life that was so trippy. I like my 20-year-old self would have been like, you're in an insane asylum. That's not real. You're imagining. That's not possible. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but
I just thought of another awkward question to ask because I'm allowed. Jennifer, if you are to pick, right, you say, for instance, right, we have a separate show called Desert Island Trek. Where people, if they're stranded on a desert island, actually, do you know what? Our Mike will bring Jennifer back for Desert
100%.
Island 100% because that's going to be brilliant. You have to tell me right now, Jennifer, without thinking too much about it.
Okay.
You were to sit down and say, I'm going to put on one episode of Star Trek to watch right now. What is it? It doesn't need to be your favorite episode. It doesn't need to be the best episode. What episode would you just sit down and go, I'm just going to watch this? Like for me, and Mike will give his own answer on this. I always pick Tin Man from the third season of The Next Generation. Is it the best episode? God, no. But I absolutely love it.
Okay, for me, it's probably anything Q. It's Q Who, Deja Q, anything Q. I would just put that on, make me happy. Especially from season 3 through 7, obviously.
No, season 2. Q Who is season 2, so you can't get away with
which is wonderful too.
season.
Yes, absolutely. But there's so much Q in like 3, 4, 5, and 6. Where's the most? There's, I'm sure there's which has the most Q. Which season has the most Q?
He's not in season. Is it 4? He's not in season 4 or 5, one or the other. He's not in that.
No.
3.
So
he's in 3, 2 and 3.
He is, yeah. He's in 2 and 3 and 4. Because Cupid is season 4. Deja Q is season 2.
I thought he showed up in every season. It's so funny. I never thought about it. Either way, my answer is Q.
No, it's season 5. He doesn't show up in, because season 6 then is True Q, and then Tapestry is season 6 as well.
I mean, Tapestry. Honestly,
I found an article.
Oh.
So he's in 15 episodes in season 1.
What? He's not in season.
No, I'm reading it here. Sorry. No, it's a total of. He's in 15 episodes in total.
Okay, I was like,
I've missed so many episodes of Star Trek already.
Okay. Well, okay, that's cool. Yeah,
that's 1, that's 2. Yeah, so season 1, season 2, season 3, season 4, season 6. So he's not in season 5.
5, okay.
Jennifer, in terms of, say, how have you found, say, the fans' relationship and kind of love towards Prodigy, actually? Because obviously there was such a massive fan outpouring when the bad news happened with Prodigy, and like all the love and support of Star Trek fans was there to kind of save it and things like that. Did you feel that on the show when you were working on it?
I absolutely did. I think the only issue is we were bummed that a lot of people didn't find it or didn't see it, or the adult Star Trek fans thought, oh, that's the kids show. And, and Mike's show for Lower Decks is obviously like, they can tell it's more adult comedy. And so that definitely was seen, and it's fantastic, by the way. But they think, oh, that's the kids show. And there's so much it's so Star Trek. And what's coming is so Star Trek. Like, adult fans will be missing big parts of true canon and true regular, Prime Universe stuff here, people. Like, so that's a kind of a bummer that I felt the love from those who saw it saying what I'm saying, which is, guys, you got to watch this. You don't understand. Like, don't let the animation fool you. Go watch it. So yes, we felt, for the people who watched it, got it. And it was such a great outpouring in that way. And I'm hoping Netflix will give it more eyeballs than Paramount could. So, it could have been a blessing in disguise. We'll find out. We'll see what happens. If they ever air it, I don't know. No, they will air it, by the way. I mean, we just don't know the drop date. But they will. And I'm sure they actually will promote it, and it'll be wonderful. And so many more people do have a subscription. So that will be wonderful. And I hope it gets people to see it more.
And will you come back for season 3 if it does hopefully happen?
If I'm available, sure. I mean, it all depends. Unless Terry does a show first, which no, there is not right now. I wish there was. But damn it, I'm going to work with Terry at some point, and hopefully he could do Star Trek, and I would love to work with him on something. But unfortunately, right now, no, that whole world it's wacky in Star Trek world right now. But luckily, we have new stuff. It's not dead. I mean, there's still stuff dropping. We're dropping. Discovery's back. We have another season of Strange New Worlds. Section 31's coming, and friggin' everything.
Last season of Lower Decks is next year, I think it is.
Yep. So it's still going. There is plenty. But I mean, who are we kidding? We all want Tyree to have a new show.
And what is next up for Jennifer Muro then going forward? Because I know Stranger Things, the animated series, is kind of is on its way. When is that coming out?
There's no set time yet. I mean, it's not like 10 years from now. No, I mean, it's coming. It is
in the next decade at some point,
in this decade, and more things will be announced soon. But that's gonna. I'm very grateful for that, because I'm a huge 80s kid and fan and love that stuff. And that's trippy and wonderful and cool. And that's a great world to, in the Stranger Things world. Just, just as a fan, it's just cool to be a part of that world. But that's been my life for a long while. And, obviously Marvel Secret Invasion was a chunk in there along while I was doing Star Trek, which was crazy. So it's been really busy. So I'm not sure what's next after Stranger Things. I'm not sure.
It doesn't sound like you'll enjoy much downtime, because I'd say because of your personality, you'll get the downtime and then go, I'm bored. I want to get back to work now. I need to be doing something. Would that be an accurate session? Yes.
I think so. And if there's so many, like, look, if Ghostbusters ever came to Back to the Future ever, like, there's things to, like, I haven't done X-Men yet. That would be lovely to do. There's still stuff I want to play with. There's still goodies to abound. So that's I'd like to keep going in that space. I mean, the live action space is really tight right now, and there's a lot of competition out there, and but animation seems to still be going pretty strong. I mean, it's tough everywhere, but I'm so glad that the animation space is being looked at as storytelling, a proper storytelling place that you can really tell great things. It's a medium. I always say it's a medium, not a genre. It's there for your using. So use it, people.
Mike, I think it might be time to ask Jennifer the awkward last question.
The really awkward last question. Don't worry. You won't need to think about it at all. It will come to you just like that.
Okay. What do we have?
Jennifer.
Yes.
What does Star Trek mean to you?
Oh, I mean, it's so corny, but it's a hopeful future. It's like what you hope can happen. It's the hope of first contact. It's the hope of being out there with other beings. I mean, that's what it means to me. It means a hopeful future. It's corny, but it's true. I mean, that's the first thing you could, like, I want that world to exist. I want that future to be real. Minus all the wars in between to get to first contact. That's not a great time. But, if we jump all the way there, that's what it means to me.
Yeah.
It means a hopeful future.
That's exactly my answer.
Okay, great.
So it's not corny at all. It's exactly my answer.
Okay, good. Because it's true.
It is true.
So, yeah.
Yep. We fix all the problems here and then we go out into space.
Yep. Yes. So everyone get on that right now.
Awesome. Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for being on the show this week. We would definitely have you back for Desert Island Treks, and we'd definitely have you back to discuss Prodigy Season 2 when that drops.
Thank you so much. I would love that. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Until next time, for everyone watching and listening, make sure you check out our website, clonestarpod.com, for amazing fan art and blogs written by you, our fans. Until next time, live long and prosper.